Western New York's severe drought spreads from county to county.
It is no secret how dry it is across Western New York.
This drought that we're in right now in Western New York beginning to drain farmers' bank accounts.
In the left hand is a normal-sized peach, and in the right, peaches grown in a Niagara County orchard without irrigation.
Well, we've never had a drought like this one, according to my father, who's 86.
The drought year was definitely rough for us. So 2016 we had the drought. We were in the moderate drought section. Anything that we gave enough water to, like it didn't have any disease, like everything had really good yields. So it was more that we didn't know if we had enough water that we started to cut out crops. So we cut out all of our fall production and our winter production.
Every year's different. My dad always had a saying, about the time you think you got it figured out, you better brace your ass because something's going to happen. And it happened last year and the year before, 2 completely different years. 2 years ago, we didn't have a decent rain from the time we planted them until we harvested them. And we have 8 irrigation pumps, and we pumped water like crazy. It takes a little over 29,000 gallons of water to put 1 inch on 1 acre.
So if you look at just the summer of 2016, going back 60 years in the historical record, this was a pretty severe drought of the magnitude that we hadn't seen before. We saw huge, devastating losses. Yeah, some farmers, I would say, lost upwards of 70–90% of their crop. You know, they had to abandon crops, they had to abandon fields. Maybe a lot of New Yorkers don't realize that 22% of the land in New York State is in agriculture. We're the #1 producer of yogurt and cottage cheese and cabbage, #3 in grapes, apples. So basically, agriculture is super important to the economy of New York State. So that's a privilege that we could start to see wane away if we don't help protect the agriculture and protect the lands and adapt to climate change.
Hasta mañana. Buen trabajo. The soil itself is a frontier. We've been living off it since the beginning of our existence, but we still really don't understand very well what happens in the top 6 inches of the soil. The potential for the soil to increase yields and decrease losses of nutrients is real, and it could be a solution for climate change. If we can just pull the carbon from the air and get it back in the soil where it's really needed and best utilized, it could resolve the climate change question that everyone is trying to figure out how to solve. This nutrient boom is a way to feed the plant just as it's growing, just like a teenager. When they're growing fast, they eat about 3 times as much. In the past, we've never had the ability to put the nitrogen on when it's needed, so we need to figure out how do we just put just the right amount on just at the right time so the plant can be as tall as possible without having excess that is lost and causes harm to the environment. The night crew is going home and the day crew is arriving. Hey, Esteban. Buenos días. ¿Cómo está? Bien, gracias. Bueno, frío.
Un poquito frío.
Mucho viento. Historically, government has funded basic research and development through grants, but governments are not functioning as well as they used to in terms of research and development. My daughter and I last week were in Washington, D.C., and I worked with the USDA and EPA extensively, trying to help work with them to overcome some of these huge challenges. And their interest is amazing. We didn't even plan meetings, but on the way down I sent an email, and by the next day they'd assembled 10 or 12 senior staff people at USDA and EPA to hear what we've been doing. It was encouraging to see their enthusiasm, and they all said, how can we help? This is great, how can we help? But they really can't. They can't just write a check, which is, it takes resources to finish development of some of these technologies. It seems like farmers are the most likely people to find those solutions because we deal with it. We're on the front lines and we're trying to we're facing the pressures of people on water quality and air quality. So we're highly motivated to find solutions. So this other alternative way of funding solutions is really this business model that we're trying to roll out. So the citizens, instead of funding through government to scientists and engineers, we do it through food products. This Pursue Happiness brand is a very broad brand, and it is broad because we want to use the funds to develop the science for human health, environmental health, but it's a way for farmers and consumers to connect directly, and so the value that consumers are willing to invest in a really healthy, environmentally sound food source, those funds become available so we can actually lead the research to find solutions.
You can sit down in the office all winter long and come out with a perfect on paper plan of what fields you want to get on first, but when it comes down to it, the weather dictates everything that you do. You got to be watching the weather. You got to be, you know, a weather guy, because you're going to have a 3-week window to get all of this work done.
Yeah, looking at the weather, trying to look at the weather. I check the weather every day.
Or many times during the day.
Many times during the day.
Planning is a wonderful way to kind of organize your thoughts, but when it boils down to it, you have to be extremely flexible on that plan and have secondary solutions to be able to accomplish all the work that needs to be done.
If you look at that picture up top, that's it's me planting some potatoes. Seriously, there's nothing you can do when it rains too much. You sit around and wait, and then when we could go, we went 18, 20 hours a day until we got stuff planted. It's just what you have to do. I always figure that's why they make beer, so you don't completely fry your nervous system with those types of seasons, you know? It's not like a factory where, you know, hey, I'm going to go to work at 8 in the morning and I'm going to do a certain thing until, you know, 4:30, 5 o'clock at night, and then I'm going home. It doesn't work that way around a farm. You've got to do what you have to do when the weather's right. And I have no idea what this, you know, some people ask me, what's this year going to be like? I'll tell you in November.